If there's anywhere in Russia that I love returning to again and again, it's the Caucasus. With beautiful scenery, great food and fantastic hospitality, it's my favourite region in the country. This time I was visiting Adygea, one of Russia's smallest republics and home to just under 500,000 people.
Spring is in the air in Adygea, and especially here in the capital, my Kop, which, appropriately enough, means Valley of the Wild Apples.
The Republic actually lies wholly within the Krasnodar region, but it has its own distinct culture. The native Adygean population has lived in the North Caucasus since the 13th century, and it's known for its music, craftsmanship, and some rather delicious treats.
Now, it won't come as a great shock to you to learn that I am a man who likes his food. So I was very excited when I heard that Adygea's most famous export is its cheese. And I'm going to get to see how it's made.
And although it comes from a very traditional recipe, the production process is distinctly modern. Adygean cheese is extremely popular throughout Russia. Mild and salty, it's a great aperitif and a favourite in salads.
This is whey being added to the milk now, and these curds literally float to the top. It's alive. You give it a good stir, you end up with a colander full of these lovely looking cheesy curds. Supposedly the cheese here tastes different than any other place in the whole of the country because of the diet of the cows and the mountain grass they eat.
It's a simple recipe that's been used in the Republic for generations, and the factory staff are careful to make sure it looks as well as tastes right.
Cheese gets flipped like a pancake to give it its distinct markings.
Once the cheeses are ready, they're sent off to cool before being packaged up to be sold around the country. Unless someone gets to them first, that is.
They make so much of this stuff, they won't miss a little bit. It's creamy like fresh mozzarella, but it's got that salty kick of something like halloumi. That really is a unique Adygea product.
But their delicious cheese isn't the only specialty you can find in this republic.
I remember when I was a child that one of my favourite stories was the tale of Moses in the bulrushes. And as you can see, the lakes and ponds around here are absolutely covered in them. And the Adygea have been making use of them as a craft material for literally thousands of years.
Zamudin Guchev still pursues an art that's almost died out in Adygea, weaving traditional bulrush mats, and he offered to show me his collection. Mats like these were discovered in graves dating back to 2000 BC, and secrets and techniques have been passed down through families ever since.
I create composite patterns. They could be likened to a song. Yes, they are like music. Needless to say, I am aware of numerous patterns, but I want to make some of my own. You can see the differences for yourself. Do you want to know how they are made? Please take a seat.
Before anything can be done, the reeds need to be cut up into more manageable pieces.
This might be a lengthy process, this one, so...
And once the slicing and dicing is complete, everything gets a good soak.
Warm water here, because it speeds up the process, and hopefully at the end of it, our rushes will be nice and flexible, and we'll be able to weave more easily.
In days gone by, it would have been very strange to see men at the loom. Traditionally, weaving was always done by the ladies of the house, but Zamudin travelled far and wide to learn the secrets of Adygea's master craftswomen, and he was ready to teach me a trick or two.
Brush the strings. Be generous with the water. Nimble fingers time.
Each rush must be threaded through the strings, tied off at the ends, and then given a good bash with the loom handle. And it's certainly more difficult than it looks.
The worrying thing was that apparently, in olden times, Adygea girls were judged on how good a wife they would be by the quality of the carpets that they brought to their wedding. At this rate, I'm definitely destined for a life on the shelf.
Fortunately, Zamuddin was on hand to correct my mistakes. But if anything was ever going to get finished, it was time for him to take over.
Well, I make that 8 seconds a leaf. So yeah, I think Zamuddin's going to speed up the process an awful lot here.
An Adygean bride was supposed to present 3 mats on her wedding day. One for the living room, one for the bedroom, and one for prayer. And nowadays, many of Zamuddin's commissions are made for the Islamic community.
This is Adygea's cathedral church. But there's also a large Muslim minority in the Republic, and until recently there was nowhere as impressive for them to worship. But then the local government decided they wanted to change all that. They'd received a $1 million grant from the United Arab Emirates, and all of Adygea's top architects were invited to submit a design for a brand new mosque. And I'm about to meet the winner.
It's safe to say that Abdullah Basirov's success has been very good for business. This wax tower is a scale model of a new national monument he's designed for the Republic, and his triumphant mosque holds pride of place in the centre of the capital. The exterior is designed to reflect elements of the male Adygean national costume, and it stands out starkly among the drab surrounding buildings. This is one of the largest mosques in the entire Caucasus, made distinct by its square minarets. And the inside is no less impressive.
We'll take off our shoes to come in.
The columns that blend in with the dome are meant to create a shape like a woman's body, symbolizing the spiritual link between the two sexes.
There's women coming from within man.
In the decades since the mosque has been built, it's attracted a thriving congregation. And according to local mufti, Nurbi Amish, it's been hugely positive for the whole community.
Before the mosque came into being, the Muslim community was disunited because Muslims used to pray in their homes. Today, thousands of men and women come to the mosque, and young people receive a moral education. Nearby churches too contribute to this mission, joining forces to fight the evils of drug and alcohol addiction.
And as I stood back to listen to the Imam's service, it was easy to see just how popular the mosque has become. It was time for me to leave my cop and start exploring some of Adygea's glorious scenery, and I had a special place in mind to start off.
Now this really is Adygea's most spectacular natural attraction, the Rufabgor Canyon, and people come from miles around to hike and take a look at its 7 beautiful waterfalls.
And it'll easily take you a day to see it all. But some people prefer to take a closer look than others.
Well, I guess that's what they call the quick way down. Blimey. Oh, привет.
Ruslan and his friend Ivan are canyoners, and they hike, climb and abseil down every waterfall they can. And sometimes they bring guests.
I hope my will's up to date.
We were going to tackle waterfall number 4, nicknamed the Girl's Plat because of its twisted appearance. Apparently, it's perfect for beginners, as long as they pay attention.
Very important instructions here. Our safety line on very tight.
And it helps if your instructor has a sense of humour.
He's a good teacher, this one. He says if I let this one go, I'm going straight into the water.
The waterfall is around 20 metres high, but that looks a long way down when you're perched on the edge.
Sometimes I wonder, why can't I just take a gentle hike through the woods? No, you have to abseil down a freezing water. Wish me luck.
There was no backing out now, and very tentatively, I dropped down the side. I'd abseiled before, but the water makes everything very slippery, although that doesn't mean you can't have a little fun.
Right, time to get wet, I think.
My right arm was almost numb by the end, but I made it to the bottom. And then there's just a refreshing swim to look forward to.
Oh my God! getting up and close and personal with nature, eh? Oh. I wish I'd brought a towel, though.
It was definitely time for a change of clothes and a hot drink, but I was determined to see as much of Adygea's countryside as I could, even if the weather did have a surprise in store for me. There's no doubt that Adygea's nature is its greatest asset. The mountains and canyons are some of the most beautiful in the Caucasus, assuming you can actually see them, of course.
Well, this gives you an idea of just how changeable the weather can be up here in the mountains. For most of the days it's been green, sunny and lovely, and now it's like we're plunged back into the middle of winter. Glad I packed my waterproofs.
And within hours, everything had turned stark white.
Well, if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't believe this amount of snow could fall in such a short period of time. But it's not going to stop us, because even though we are outdoors, there is a rather beautiful indoor attraction that we can still visit.
And that meant heading almost 40 meters down under the earth.
It's not exactly dry, but wow, isn't this incredible? It's the Big Adygea cave, translated from the Russian, and it's the largest open limestone cave in the area.
This is one of the most spectacular caves in Europe because of its wealth of stalactites and stalagmites, and it's one of the area's most popular tourist spots.
Take a look at these stalactites here. Apparently it takes 100 years for them to grow just 1 centimetre. So you can imagine the thousands of years it's taken for it to get to that length. Incredible.
There's a lot of ups and downs to this cave if you want to see it in its full glory. But if you do get tired, there's a natural pick-me-up you can try.
Adygea is a land of legend, and this cave has its fair share. Now, these two pillars supposedly have a positive and a negative charge, and if you touch them simultaneously, it's supposed to fill you with energy. Much better.
By the following morning, it was like our little winter interlude had never happened. And down by the water's edge, there are some fascinating discoveries to be made.
This is the White River, and it's a real archaeological treasure for the Adygea Republic because it's littered with beautifully preserved examples of ammonite fossils, all of which date back more than 100 million years. And hopefully, there should be a great example right over here. Здравствуйте. Yeah. Oh, садись. Очень приятно. Наш эксперт аммонитов.
Nubrilov Pash has been studying Adygea's fossils for more than 25 years and has helped move the best examples to the Republic's Stone Park Museum.
You can have a look here at kind of a cross-section of the ammonite itself and the actual former remains of the animal here and all these layers that have built up over the millions and millions of years to create this vast fossil.
The park boasts some of the largest and best preserved ammonites in the world, and Nubri has his own ideas about what they all look like.
A Mongolian sitting on his horse here, right? This one is supposed to resemble a Roman. It's a bit more kind of Russian grandma than Julius Caesar, but, you know, all a case of perception.
And the king of the jungle is well represented too.
There's animal fossils here, right? A family of lions here with the male at the top, children and a lioness here at the front. We've got a whole pride, another lion here. There's a lion about to spring. Slightly resembling Kenny from South Park, maybe.
They may be open to some artistic interpretation, but it's impossible to forget that these huge natural sculptures are so ancient they were formed when this whole area was still covered by ocean, and the locals believe they have mystical properties.
So here they've taken inspiration for some old Adygea legends. And apparently, if you climb up to the highest point in the stone museum, and if we shout a particular word, it will get rid of all our negative energy and vibrations. So, Norim, what do we need to shout?
Tar orupsau.
Ta orupsau, да? Okay. Raz, dva, tri. Ta orupsau!
And it's not just spiritual refreshment that's on offer in this republic. You just need to take a trip up into the mountains to find it.
Believe it or not, these are tea bushes. And no, we haven't just hopped on a plane to China, we are still very much in Adygea. And this is the most northerly tea plantation in the world.
And according to head botanist Boris Korozun, the tea plant is much more robust than you might think.
This region is one of the best places for growing tea, because when temperatures here drop below zero, it's normally accompanied by snow. Our plants can withstand temperatures as low as 30 degrees below zero, or about -22 Fahrenheit.
Although the cold weather does leave its mark.
Sometimes we find damaged leaves, like this one. This happens because of the cold.
This is a seriously gourmet product that sells for up to $10 per 100 grams. And everyone here is trained to make the most of it.
So this pruning is a very important process because it allows the shoots to grow back even higher. So when it does come to summer and picking time, you get a much higher yield. So we need to give them a good trim.
Although you have to make sure you're cutting in the right places.
I think that's just an instruction to give it more welly, James, okay?
Each bush takes around 5 years to reach maturity, and when its leaves are harvested, every ton yields around 250 kilograms of precious black tea.
Right, well, it certainly seems that this is a pretty exclusive tea, but apparently, if it's going to be really special, I need to go and find one more ingredient.
And nothing goes with it better than another locally sourced product.
Right, this is definitely the right place. Just be a little bit careful.
Apiaries are commonplace in this part of Adygea, and Nikolai has one of the most successful. Apparently, it's rare for the bees to attack you here, but it doesn't hurt to take precautions.
I'll stick this on. It's quite ominous sound. Now, that is a little frightening, but
with the tasty wildflowers of the mountains to feed on, a good hive can produce up to 100 kilos of honey in a season, and it was time to smoke out the bees.
well, this supposedly makes the bees think that the hive might need to be abandoned, so they start eating, and it calms them down. So hopefully, no stings.
And with its 3,000 residents feeding away, I was free to grab a slice.
Okay, I'm going to try and avoid the bee sticking its tongue in the comb next to me. So, the moment of truth. Let's get this off. That is beautiful. I've never had honey straight from a hive before. And that is not massively overly sweet, but it's just delicious.
And with my side dish secured, I was finally ready for a brew.
Okay, now I am ready for a tea party. So my Adygea tea has been brewing here. So pour myself some of that. And just a little chunk of this beautiful honey. Now that is a proper posh cuppa.
Tea making is a relatively modern addition to Adygean culture, but back in my cop, I had a chance to take a look at one of the Republic's most ancient arts.
The Adygea have always been a warrior people, and in olden times their weapons would never have been far from their hands. In fact, a man's most precious possessions were considered to be his horse, his gun, his sword and his daggers. And the more beautiful they were, the more prestige he had.
And even though the battles may be long gone, there's still a demand for these antique items of war. Murat is one of only a handful of weaponsmiths still working in Adygea, and he offered to show me where he creates his pieces. Most of the time he's restoring old weapons to their former glory, and it's a long and fiery process.
If I remember my chemistry correctly, it's the end of the blue flame that's supposed to be the hottest bit, so I'm trying to get that on the silver. But the melting point? Nah, can't remember that.
Once the silver is molten, it's poured into a mould and left to harden.
Hold that very strongly. So we have our little lump of silver here that should be, hopefully, used to decorate our scabbard once I've cooled it down.
A complete dagger needs months of effort, so we were going to concentrate on one tiny piece. But even that takes some very delicate handiwork.
Still some more room with this wire to thin out. If I give it a good tug.
And now that we had our wire, we needed something to attach it to.
Okay. I think that is done. All right?
Each of Murat's ornaments is an original design, and once the pattern is in place, it's welded together.
So there's our little decorative ball for our dagger, and that's taken already about 10 hours of work to get it to this stage. So look at this, and that's 3 months. Definitely a labour of love.
But there's only one place where a dagger like this really fits, and that's on a proper Caucasian costume. And I knew just where to find one.
Now, one thing I've learnt in my travels is how important music, dance and tradition is to the people of the Caucasus. And by the sounds of things, Adygea is no exception. And here are some spectacularly dressed gentlemen.
These talented musicians are members of Adygea's state dance company, Nalms, and they're preparing for a seasonal concert. Their drums are Adygea's national instrument, although pronouncing their name correctly is a bit of a tongue twister.
That is a sound that does not come easily to an English voice.
Apparently it takes years to master this technique, and I had around half an hour to catch up.
Looks easy, да? Я думаю, нет. This is it's tricky. It's чуть-чуть трудно.
I decided that if I played quietly, I might just get away with it, especially with the spectacular show going on in front of me.
So the mountains, music, and one heck of a performance. Now that's what the Adygean spirit is all about.
For one of Russia's smallest republics, Adygea leaves a big impression. This is a place that shows off the best of the Russian Caucasus, a fascinating culture, breathtaking, and a genuine warm hospitality for those lucky enough to visit.